Get to hit the record button. Got it. That's so important. Everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can see from our backdrops, we're continuing to celebrate Black History Month. And so we got a couple more days to learn a little bit more about our heritage and to share Black history. Sadiq, you had a great comment that you mentioned about Black history, and its original intent was for all of us to bring our knowledge to that space. And so we want to encourage you to continue to bring your knowledge to whatever circles you're involved in. We are honored this morning by your presence all over Oklahoma, Ohio, Boston, all over. And Sadiq mentioned the mentoring movement is moving forward. So thank you for joining us. I want to introduce myself. My name is Dayon McLaurin Johnson, and I am a management and support outreach for Mentor Maryland, DC. Thank you for putting that up on the screen. I always mess up who I am. And so I want to also introduce my two esteemed colleagues whom I've come to just so appreciate their work in this space of mentoring. So first, we'd like to introduce Renee and then Sadiq.
Hey everyone, Renee Angela Mock, Program Outreach and Support for the Maryland side of Mentor Maryland, DC. I'll pass to Sadiq.
Hey folks, good morning. And again, just super excited to be with you all. Sadiq Ali, proud executive director of Mentor Maryland, DC. Been around the organization since our inception, way back in 2018, a simpler time, right, pre-pandemic. But we're just so excited to be with you all this morning for this really, really important conversation. And we called ourselves guides because we aren't really here to train you all on anything, but rather offer up some resources and really help facilitate a conversation amongst all of us. So again, really excited to you all. Happy Friday, happy Black History Month.
Very good. So Sadiq, you want to share also our agenda and our Zorms as we get ready to go through Zorms, as we call them?
Let's do it. Let's do it. So a little bit about the agenda. So again, we're gonna cover our Zorms and a little bit about us as an organization for those who this might be your first time tuning in to a conversation hosted by us. Again, we're excited you're here. But we're going to talk about the importance of cultural relevance, because of course today's topic is all about culturally relevant mentoring best practices for Black youth in the shadow of Black History Month. But we want to have a conversation around what brought you all here. We're going to spend a good portion of the morning on the concept of cultural humility, which is really the foundation for us being able to understand anything else. Renee is going to lead us through an activity around identity, which I'm really excited about. Then we're going to offer some thoughts around having conversations about race, because again, if we're not willing to confront it and have a conversation about it, there's no way that we're able to work through it. So we're excited about that as well. We're also going to give a brief introduction to, again, a very, very important concept, critical mentoring. Some of you all are familiar with and have read about this already, but we're going to give you, again, a high-level overview. Then we're going to close it out with some resources and having a conversation, again, about how to respectfully celebrate Black History Month. Because guess what, y'all? We still got a couple of days left. And feel free, as Dayon just said, feel free to keep the spirit of Black History Month as well as Black futures alive throughout the course of the entire year. Next slide. So a little bit about our Zorms, right? Y'all saw that, right? Zoom norms. We lifted this from one of our colleagues, right? We know at this point, this is like your 11 millionth Zoom webinar or meeting. So I'm like, I don't think anybody still has problems with the mute button. But just in case, Dayon, we're gonna like, hey, please leave yourself on mute. There's gonna be a couple of opportunities where we ask folks to come off mute and share thoughts and feelings. But please, especially to our introverts out there, please use the chat box for everything. That's questions, that's comments, that's aha moments, that's resources, because again, we don't have all the resources, right? If we did, we would just spend the entire conversation this morning on just sharing our resources. So, but you all each have things to share. Please share those resources, links, etc. in the chat box. Please be respectful, supportive, and inquisitive, right? We want to lead with questions and an inquisitive heart. We don't want to jump to any conclusions or make any assumptions throughout the course of our time together. Space and grace. We're gonna make mistakes. I'm sure we probably have already. So we ask that you give us space and grace, as it's our pleasure to give it to you all, and we hope that you all are giving it to each other as well, right? This idea of grace. And then again, just listen for that one thing that you can walk out of here knowing that it's bettered you, that it's made you a better you. So listen for something to better yourself throughout the course of this, right? And we really hope that you don't walk out of here at 11:30 the exact same way that you came to us at 10 a.m. So again, really, really excited. And again, one more thing to note, just our overall objective, because any of the portions that we shared on that agenda could in and of themselves be 8-hour-long sessions. So please don't walk out of here or walk into this conversation think that we're about to give you, everything that you need. This is a start. This is a starting point. And we really, really hope that folks are encouraged and inspired to continue walking through the door and to pick up any of the resources that we share to go deeper with them, to continue your own self-study. So again, we're going to give you tidbits and high-level overviews of several concepts, again, with the hope that you will go deeper in your self-study. So with that, I'll pass it back to Renee.
Thank you. So yeah, it seems that many people from all over are here with us. So if you're not familiar with Mentor Maryland, DC, we are our region's affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. So we were founded in Maryland in 2018, officially expanded into DC in 2021. And our aim and the aim of the affiliates in the National Mentoring Partnership is to close the mentoring gap and ensure that mentoring programs are doing their absolute best work for the safety and effectiveness for our kids across Maryland and DC, but across USA and where all of you all are here today. So our pillars, the pillars of the work that we aim to get done. So our quality work and holding trainings like these, ensuring that you all are aware of and have the tools to use best practices. Technical assistance. So one of our consultants, Jeanette, is on this call. If you apply for technical assistance, you might be matched with someone like Jeanette who can spend one-on-one time with you in your program to ensure that you guys have everything that you need. Again, our quantity work, what's the numbers, again, closing that mentoring gap, assisting you all into recruitment. We're aiming to connect more with school districts. We're currently working with Baltimore City Public Schools and a few other counties we're starting that work with because that's where kids spend most of their time. So we want to make sure that mentoring is happening where kids are. Then elevating the field, highlighting the voices of the local mentoring field, of you all, of what's actually going on, of our youth, and making sure that people are aware of what's going on and able to support your work how they see fit, as well as staying connected with our local governments and politicians, advocating for the cause of mentoring at a systems level, and ensuring that the needs of our youth and of our programs are being heard by those who can make a difference, and ensure that, again, that you all have everything you need to do the work. So again, we have our connection with
Is that me or is that her?
No, that might be Renee freezing a little bit.
Okay.
What we just say, y'all, space and grace.
Space and grace, Renee. And whenever it goes out, your face is always the expression. So everybody will get to pick on Renee for a minute with that expression in our next staff meeting. But just thank you for your support. And you can see the things that we do as an organization. Our support is on the screen. I think she might still be talking too.
No, keep rolling, Dayan.
All right. So what we want to do, just to start out, we want to start out with an icebreaker, and just really for everybody on our call to really reflect about this space that we're about to enter into. And so the question that we want you to reflect on, and we won't have it on the screen, but the question is, why do you think the concept of culturally relevant mentoring is important right now? Why do you think the concept of culturally relevant mentoring is so critical in all of our spaces right now? And just if you could reflect on that, and then if you want to put your comments in the chat, and then also we want to welcome anybody that wants to come off mute and to share just why this is so critically important right now, culturally relevant mentoring. Let's take a moment. Who wants to come off mute?
I will. I'm typing it now, but I'll share and expand. My name is Naila. I work with the Enoch Pratt Free Library here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm an assistant manager and as well as a librarian, teen librarian.
Thank you.
And I believe it's important for youth and even adults, honestly, to see healthy images, healthy lives, healthy responsibility, just healthy life. Youth need to see that represented, and it doesn't have to look like a certain religious belief, ethnicity, gender, or whatever. They just need to see healthy options, healthy choices being represented, and see and let them know that they are empowered, that they can make choices, that it takes some work and some gumption, and that people are here for them. And adults need to see that and know that as well, because I think a lot of adults can be disillusioned that youth don't care, youth are hopeless and things like that. So we don't want to keep perpetuating that that same thought process. So we need to encourage ourselves while we're doing that for youth.
Good. Thank you, Naila. And, you know, when someone shares, feel free, everybody, to put some comments in the chat, give some shout outs, put some emojis up there. Thank you for sharing. Who else wants to share out culturally relevant mentoring, critical right now? Love that heart. Put some hearts up. I like that. We need hearts on a Friday.
There's some amazing comments in the chat box too, Dayon.
Let's see. I've got my chats on the other screen. It's a little causing me to bend my neck. What we got here? Yeah, the concept of relevant hope, like that. I like Marlon put, I believe that areas of cultural relevance regarding youth is critical to influencing the shaping of their identity. That's good, good. Andrea, more and more people are reflecting on their own experiences. People are seeking to find safe spaces, yeah, within their communities.
That's powerful, that idea of safe spaces. That's really, really powerful.
And then she added being culturally aware. When you're culturally aware, it allows that safe space. That's good, good. Anybody else want to come off mute and share? This is a safe space, by the way.
This is Ray Lucas. I'd like to share a little bit about cultural relevance. You know, we have to, I mean, we're in a society, I mean, we've got billions of people around the world. All of them they're individuals, and they're also part of groups. And when we become culturally aware, it facilitates our ability to navigate our lives through all of the differences out there, and also look for how you add to your own essence from other people's things that you didn't know. I think cultural awareness is critical to our ability to navigate a world that is not always going to be good to us.
Yeah. I like the image of that navigation that you mentioned, you know, navigating through some unsafe spaces. Thank you, Ray, for sharing that. We've got time for a couple more comments. We've budgeted some time for this open dialogue. So anyone else want to share about the concept of culturally relevant mentoring? Why is it critical now?
Yeah, Dayon, I just wanted to kind of just reiterate something that Ray said, but also just and what I had shared about the shaping of identity. One of the things that I am seeing just in the St. Louis region alone, and definitely as a father of 7, and who 6 of them are all adults, this area of influencing identity, because one of the things that I deal with as a professional dealing with in the mentor space and as a father also, of understanding that, man, they are experiencing so many influences that impact how they see themselves, how they see the world around them. And because of just the exposure of media on so many levels, they are receiving all these different messages at a high speed. It's just like, boy, once I think that I capture it and kind of have a hold of understanding this particular youth and their needs, it's like, they're influence, all these other influences that are coming at them at this, and they're unfiltered. And so, and I think about that just, this whole proximity of being a parent and being a mentor specialist. It's just like, I deal with that on both ends. And it's just like, how do you support them when, they have all these other influences that are shaping their identity, and just being aware of that, because culture to me is becoming increasingly subjective, because there are so many subcultures, subcultures, and sometimes it's hard to track that, so we have to have our ear and being more sensitive to all the different influences that are shaping our youth identity.
I really like that. What stuck out in my mind is the fluidity of, you mentioned the cultures and the subcultures, and we as practitioners, it's imperative for us to remain relevant and aware. Thank you for sharing. We've got time for one more. Anyone else like to share out?
Dan, I would love to invite Garrett to share. I think Garrett's comment really undergirds what we just heard from Brother Ray and Brother Marlon in terms of, right, like this sense of self. When that is strong enough in our young people, it can withstand a lot of what we see that Brother Marlon just described. So I would love to hear from Garrett. His comment, that comment is powerful. I love that as well, and I think connects beautifully.
Thanks, Brother Sadiq. Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. I'm Garrett Richardson. I work with Bloomberg Associates here in New York City. I've been working close with Brother Sadiq in the great city of Baltimore. A lot of the great work happening for boys and young men of color. Really happy to be a part of this community today, but I'll just be brief. I've been thinking a lot in this work, this mentoring work, about self-efficacy and the importance of young people understanding their power. We talked about, asset framing, right? Instead of looking at yourself as a deficit, but understanding that you already come, whether it's into our schools, into our communities, into our organizations, with a wealth of knowledge, experience that often is left untapped by a lot of leaders in the mentoring field. So I think when you think about culturally relevant mentoring, it's a way to remind our young people that you are valuable, not just because of what you can become, but because of who you already are. And I think if you can remain resolute and have a strong foundation, I mean, we all as adults have to have a strong sense of self. Otherwise, we end up like, the leaf blowing in the wind, which is far too often the case for a lot of our young people, right? So we want them to be strong rooted. We want them to be trunks, right? We want them to be strong roots. And that only comes with a strong sense of self. So when you have culturally relevant mentoring, especially at an early age, you're able to mature and develop as someone who has a clear sense of who they are, what their values are, and you allow that to, you use those values and use that strong sense of identity to catapult yourself and put yourself in places and spaces where you can grow and continue to blossom. So I think it's our jobs as the experts in this field to make sure that every young person we come in contact with never leaves an interaction without a strong sense of, the value that they're already bringing by just showing up and what they've been able to achieve.
So good. So good. Garrett, thank you for sharing. Yeah, we got some claps and snaps. Thank you. Wow. This is a great, this provides the roots. Yeah, the strong for the rest of our remainder of our time together. So Garrett, thank you once again for sharing. Sadiq, if you don't mind, could I just pause for just a second, just a quick second? I know I'm going to go off script, just real quick. We've been talking a lot about mental health, and coming into this space, I personally am experiencing a little bit of anxiety about what's happening all the way on the other side of the planet. And I just wanted to acknowledge that space, even as mentors and practitioners. Sometimes our young people enter into a space like this, and even though everything looks good on the screen, there's this undercurrent of tension, and this Ukraine-Russian thing has kind of got me off kilter a little bit. And so I wanted to bring that into the space, and you also coming to this space might feel a little bit off kilter, but wanting to acknowledge that in this space and take a moment for our own mental health and well-being. So before we transition, Sadiq, I want to see if you have any comments on that, and then we can go into the next segment.
No, I just want to say thank you so much for that, Dayan. That is not at all off script, but rather, again, what makes us all human. Dayan and I, this week, we've been having, some really intense conversations as a team just around, this idea of family and how sometimes the word family, it can be tossed around very loosely, but in other times, it really is it's an aspirational measure. It's an aspirational word, right? Because this idea that we're all a human family and we all bleed when we get pricked and we all have emotions when different situations arise and different scenarios that impact us all in a different way. So I think it's not only appropriate, I think it's necessary for us to pause and check in with each other. Because again, even the core of this conversation is heavy, which is why we opened it up so light, because we understand that the world is moving very, very fast. We all are fighting battles internally and externally as we speak, and are all brought here by this common thread and this common ideal that we care about what happens to people in this world, and that work is part of what makes us who we are. Not all that we are, as Garrett just laid out, but it's a huge part of who we are. So I really, really appreciate that. And just drop a heart. Just drop an emoji, drop a 1 if you're feeling us in the chat box. Just give us a reaction, let us know that you're with us, and we're gonna keep rolling. But I think that's perfectly on script, my brother.
Appreciate you. So we're gonna go ahead and begin our continued conversation on cultural humility. We've got a video that we want to share, and we're gonna put that on the screen right now.
Becoming a better mentor. Strategies to be there for young people. Practicing cultural humility. Cultural humility is an ongoing, lifelong process of self-reflection and learning about how social identity and experiences are shaped by systems of oppression, power, and privilege. Social identity is a person's sense of who they are based on their group membership, which can reflect physical, social, and mental characteristics and can be self-claimed or ascribed by others. Everyone has multiple social identities. As such, cultural humility is important in all mentoring relationships, even if mentors and mentees are similar in important characteristics, like race or gender, because there are likely many other ways that they differ. Cultural humility is grounded in continuous self-reflection. This involves asking questions about and exploring the many ways you define yourself. For example, your race, gender, class, ability, sexuality, and religion, and what those identities mean in the context of the power structures in the United States. Cultural humility also involves an ongoing process of learning about your mentee. Actively seek opportunities to learn about your mentee's culture and, when warranted and invited, to participate in that culture. You may also explore how systems of oppression and privilege shape your mentee's experiences. The more you understand this, the more you will be able to offer meaningful support. Cultural humility is not cultural competence, which many people confuse. Cultural competence assumes that there is an endpoint in learning. that you can simply observe and read about another culture, then you are done. This attitude could lead mentors to be overconfident in their relationships with youth. Cultural humility is also not colorblindness. Some Americans grew up believing that seeing race is a form of prejudice and discrimination in and of itself, and even mentioning a person's race is racist. Colorblindness creates a discomfort around individuals who are racially different from you because they may feel that they can't bring their full self into a relationship. You can start building your cultural humility by reflecting on questions such as, how do my social identities shape my worldview and experiences? How have systems of privilege and oppression shaped my own identities and experiences? How do I make space in my mentoring interactions for my mentee to express their own identities? Committing and actively engaging in a process of ongoing self-reflection and learning about your own social identity is the key in being a mentor who is culturally humble. See the full chapter at mentoring.org/bettermentor for more tips on how you can be a better mentor.
Good. Continue to put your thoughts in the chat. Really good comments. And Renee's going to come on the stage.
All right, thank you. So I'm actually about to drop in the chat the link to this chapter. So this is referring, I want to just introduce this resource, the Becoming a Better Mentor resource, which I alluded to earlier, which was recently released by the National Mentoring Partnership. This is a huge resource, and Cultural Humility is one chapter of it, but it's specifically for mentors, information that they can immediately apply to their new mentoring relationships or existing mentoring relationships. So everything you see today, we will ensure that you have access to the linked versions of it so you can use these, because that's our purpose here today. So it's very aware to me from y'all's comments and what we just learned in the video that we have the understanding of cultural humility and cultural relevancy, which is excellent. But the kind of major takeaway from the video is that, right, it's essential to to engage in that continuous self-reflection and to actively seek out opportunities to learn about your mentees' identity and cultural experiences, or whoever. You guys have seen me before, and I do a lot of training or mentoring, but when you really think about it, it's really just about all relationships and communication. So that's what I love about this kind of field, is that it can inform how you relate to anybody. So like, why cultural humility and how can we apply it? So as we know, many of our mentors and mentees are coming from different backgrounds and experiences, and having that acknowledgement and that, internal learning about, what's our deal culturally and how we relate to the world, and what is our mentees' experiences as well. So it can help overcome those barriers or those differences between them as well. And we also know that for youth of color, the data says that having that experience on their part and them feeling empowered in their cultural identity increases their positive outcomes. So it's a win-win-win for sure. And then again, it helps create opportunities and shared opportunities of that ongoing learning. So for mentors to learn about themselves, for mentees to learn about themselves, for your organization, for you to really learn and understand, who is it that you're serving? Who is it that you're inviting to spend time, with your clients, with your youth? And in the community that your organization is in, what's really going on. And as we know about culture, these things are constantly changing, and that's why the learning has to be continuous, because the definition for your culture or this community today will be different tomorrow, next month, next year, the next 5 years. So that's why this learning is just beginning. It needs to be moving on. And then of course, cultural humility allows us to acknowledge the power dynamics. So not only just power dynamics between a mentor mentee, obviously age is a power dynamic, and age is a microculture as well, but also power dynamics across racial groups and ethnic groups. So we want that to be clear and talked about rather than pretending to ignore it and that it's not there. We want to acknowledge those power dynamics. so we can dismantle them and have clear modes of communication between mentors and mentees. So we can go to the next slide. So we're going to be moving into this activity. It's called the Identity Wheel. And in the chat, I'm going to link you a whole PDF with how to do this activity with mentors and mentees. But again, this activity is valuable for anybody in the group to do. So you might be able to guess, this is your wheel. And 7 things, your identifiers that make up you. So your community, your race and ethnic group, your hobbies and interests, your beliefs and values, your gender, family, and religion, and spirituality. So we're going to, we can move to the next slide. So in that link, you'll find this wheel in there. You may want to get pen and paper, but what you're going to do when you break out is first spend some time individually filling in each piece of the wheel of what aspect, I got the mention of that aspect of your identity that's most important to you. So when you think about your religion and spirituality, what is most important? Write that in there, make a note. And then after you fill out each aspect of the circle, the 7 aspects, think about for one or more of them, what was an experience where you felt particularly proud to be a part of that group or a part of that community, a part of that religion, a part of that ethnic group, et cetera. And then move on to think about an experience where there was some pain associated with being associated with that group and that dimension of your identity. This, and then of course, we'll come out to discuss. So it is 10:35 now, so we will be able to spend until 10:45. I'll say too that this is an activity that you could spend a lot of time on. So
Becoming a better mentor. Strategies to be there for young people.
I'm hearing a video. Okay. We want to give you guys as much time as possible, but again, this is an activity that you will want to take with you and will, excuse me, you'll want to spend even more time in than we even have to do today. So I encourage you still to take this with you, but for now, we're going to spend about a little bit less than 10 minutes in group. We'll come back together. Okay, you guys have the link to the document. I'm going to open these rooms in just a minute. We can pause recording and we will come back together and discuss that way. 1 second. I'm going to drop the link so it's one more time as well. Just come back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope you all had some wonderful conversations and I hope to hear about it as well. But just to go through that activity, can you tell me, how it felt to do that? What came up? What have you learned about yourself or about someone else's experience? So feel free to drop that in the chat, raise your hand, come off mute. How was that for everybody?
Okay, I'll share something about the experience.
Please.
I would say, so nothing, there's a lot to probably share about just the activity itself, but one of the things I thought as it relates to the topic of cultural relevance, as it relates to young people, I think one of the key things just in doing that exercise and that activity is getting beyond the awkwardness of initiating and engaging with each other. To me, that's something I think when you start talking about, cultural relevance, awareness, sensitivity, humility, is managing our own awkwardness in certain spaces and being able to be, be aware of our own sensitivity in order to be aware of others. I think that's really cute because a lot of our young people are experiencing that, and that does happen, and we have to be aware of that when we're engaging with them, when they're engaging with society or the world around them, that there is an initial awkwardness that is normal. And to understand, creating that safe space for understanding that is normal. That's a part of it, but you'll get through it. And everyone shares that. So I just wanted to share that part of the experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's so true. And when I used to train mentors directly, I always say, you kind of have to deal with your own stuff before you're able to deal with a kid's stuff, right? So if you have sensitivities about your own cultural experience or the community you come from, you kind of have to deal with that so you don't end up projecting it onto, your mentee's experience or someone else's experience. So Haley says she shares something that was typically hard for her to share.
with other people's actions and thoughts. However, she found that she had something in common with someone else. Great. Right. And those are things too about the identity wheel. Those aren't all things that someone could fill out just by looking at you, right? You could have those shared parts of your identity and experience with someone else and not even know until you do this kind of activity and really list it out and share about those experiences. Because very often, right, we think about like, this is just me and my experience, but there are those shared experiences that we can't see, that we have to hear from each other when we invite that conversation, make space for that conversation. That's great. I'm glad that you had that experience. That's so nice. I thought, yeah, it took a few minutes to just share your own individual information. Yes, this is an activity that you could work on individually first for quite a while, especially if you're spending that time with a student who maybe hasn't had the opportunity to do that self-reflection as well. Make it so you fill out your color wheel and you draw, and you can do all kinds of things with that wheel to kind of break the ice, do some individual work, and then make the space for that conversation. Right. I think Andrea just said, my identity isn't something you can see on my face. You have to ask and be open to share. Yes, exactly. And this is a way to invite that conversation. And again, it starts with that individual work, which I think helps break the ice and not make it so awkward right away. You're not going to walk through there and be like, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. But again, to do that, self-learning before we kind of get into the conversation. Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'll make sure I'm not going over my time here. Yeah, I'm ready now. So like I said, this is an activity. There's a full list of instructions of how to introduce it and spend time doing it. I've done this in just trainings with mentors first, so then they can bring the activity to their kids and have that time for self-reflection first. You can introduce this activity with mentors and mentees, with your staff, families, volunteers. I really think a lot of people benefit the opportunity to do this activity. And I want to acknowledge Michael's comment about the Don't Take Gay bills going on in the country right now. Trans youth are at a specific risk across there's like 39 states right now with anti-trans kids bills. We know that certain parts of our identities are being attacked at every level. And again, identifying that and becoming shared and connected in our experiences, again, this opened opportunity for connection. And with that connection and community is strength. So yeah, I hope that you can apply this activity, use it, reinvent it, redraw it, make it more beautiful, and make it work for your kids, your mentors, and your organization. So I hope you use that takeaway. So I'm going to pass it to Sadiq as we move into the rest of our program today.
No, thank you all so much. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. And again, Michael, continuing on that point, this is a baseline activity. We can reinvent it, we can edit it, we can add those different categories. And to Renee's point, we know for a fact that our youth who identify across the LGBTQ spectrum are under attack. So it's critically important, especially in those programs that we know work specifically either with LGBTQ youth or have young people who identify as such in our programs, that we address it respectfully and in a way that's calming, safe, and affirming to those young people. So just wanted to continue to address that. One more piece before we pass it to Dayon for another really, really important section of our conversation. For those who are not familiar with the work of Dr. Edwin Nichols, he has done some amazing research on the philosophical aspects of cultural difference. So we wanted to just call out and not spend too much time on this, but again, encourage some of that self-study. And it's already been shared in the Cultural Humility video, right? This idea of worldview and axiology, right? Worldview being defined as, right, that fundamental orientation that we have as an individual or a society, a group of folks that, again, influences our entire point of view. And then again, axiology being that study of the nature of value and valuation and the kind of things, right, that different types of people, ethnicity-wise, culture-wise, value. So I just think it's really, really important to understand that, this idea of culture it is both, skin deep as well, and those things that we can see with our eyes, as well as, multitudes of order deeper in terms of our experiences as people. And again, even as we look at geography and regions, from where folks originate, is really, really important to call out. So this is just another layer that I invite folks to continue digging into. And just drop a 1 if anybody's familiar with the work of Ed Nichols. He's done some amazing work, more on the research side, more for the research nerds, but Ed Nichols brings the heat, Dr. Nichols. We're gonna pass it back to Dayon. Strategies for having conversations about race with your mentees. And then again, shout out to our friends at Talbot Mentors for lifting this up as we co-hosted a conversation with them last year on this same topic. Dayon?
Sadiq, man, you're not a research nerd. That's the first thing. Come on, man. So I just wanted to real quick just make a point or a comment to Horace's point in the chat. And everybody, please keep your comments in the chat. This is so good because it really helps us to continue to engage with each other. And Horace mentioned these vulnerable conversations, and it's not, well, serendipitous that that's actually the strategies that we're about to share. And Horace, you mentioned that in your comments. So we'll go to the next slide. We're going to give you guys some strategies for these difficult conversations. One, stay engaged, and the second thing is racialize your voice. The opposite of racializing is that whole concept of being colorblind. I don't see color, I see everybody as the same. On the contrary, when you racialize your voice, you enter into the conversation. I come in this conversation as an African-American male. I'm a little older. This is how I come to the conversation, and I racialize my own voice and bring that as a part of my identity and welcome that in the conversation. And then what that does is that also allows your mentee to do the same. Speak your own truth, share what's personal, what's local, what's immediate, what's happening right now. Speak your own truth. Also, this is one that I really love, this experience the discomfort. One thing that I am conflict avoidant. So I try to dance around things that make me uncomfortable. But when we start talking about these norms for our conversations with our mentees, we've got to sit in the discomfort and work through it. And so that's one thing that comfortable with who we are first before we're able to convey that need for comfortability with our mentees. And the other thing that we talked about is accepting the fact that this is non-closure, but it's an ongoing process that doesn't come to a close. I was in some diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations last year, and it was with some colleagues that were working at Johns Hopkins, and the concept was the fact that we are never going to get to a place where we're done. We don't need to talk about it. And for some of us that like closure, that is difficult to accept. And so that is a area that we have to share with our mentees and let them know that this is an ongoing work. Let's go to our next slide. Here are some key terms, and you've noticed that we've interspersed these in our conversations today already. The humility, one thing, reading a book on humility, let's see, I was trying to get the title to that book, but it talks about being teachable, coming into your conversations with your mentee, not with the patriarchal know-it-all mentality, but instead coming to every conversation, coming into the relationship with your mentee from a place of humility, racialized experience, acknowledging the fact that we all come from different backgrounds, and then the equity and equality, coming at a place of where we're all on the same level playing field. This is critical for your relationship with your mentees. And these are terms that will not only apply to the relationship, but also terms that you can discuss with your mentee on a regular basis as you mentor with your your mentee. Let's go to the next slide. Mentoring has a diversity dynamic. One thing that you'll notice is that the mentors in our field, 65% of our mentors are white and 60% of our mentees are people of color. Now, we won't go into the background of narrative and how very often there's the concept of, oh, those poor Black people, they need to have mentors, you know, and we won't go into, you know, some of the saviorism mentality, but notice it has a diversity dynamic that we have to be aware of when we enter into this space, and then acknowledge it, bring it to the forefront, and so that it can become a part of our conversation and our mentoring expertise. Next slide. We have a responsibility to acknowledge race in this mentoring space, sort of what I had just mentioned. Acknowledge it, don't gloss over it, bring it to the conversation. And even though the conversations might be uncomfortable, go ahead and begin to make that space a place where your mentee can enter, knowing that there's not going to be the judgment, there's not going to be, you know, the negative space or the negative narrative surrounding race in your conversations that you might have. Now, the next slide talks about how can we approach conversations about race with youth. And there are a couple of points that we want to bring. One, we approach it with openness. This really gives the mentee an opportunity, almost like a door, to enter into the conversation, knowing that there's not going to be any repercussions to the conversation. So openness is one, allowing passage for your mentee. The second one that comes after openness is going to be understanding, an agreement of opinion or feeling, an adjustment of differences. Understanding is really putting yourself in a place to listen and to embrace the issues and the identity and the things that your mentee is bringing to the conversation. Now, understanding and agreement are two completely different things, but having an understanding and trying to put yourself in the mentee's shoes, having the empathy and understanding where they're coming from is critical, and one of the best practices when you're working with your mentee. So openness, understanding, vulnerability. One thing that I love the brother mentioned, I think it was Brother Marlon, taking a risk with not only your own being able to share your own vulnerabilities and the own things that you're experiencing emotionally, bringing that vulnerability often then shows and models to the mentee his or her ability to also be vulnerable. And when you have two vulnerable individuals that are operating in humility, it opens the conversation, it opens up the relationship for much deeper work internally, which then helps our identity and helps us step into more efficacious adulthood, if we want to call that. So vulnerability is critical, one of the things that we like to bring out. And a couple more, validation. Validation, I love this point. That's something that I really enjoy doing, is validating people's experience, validating people's comments, validating people's thoughts. And sometimes there's a tension because you don't want to come across as you're, being sort of like placing yourself in a position above your mentee, and like, oh, great job, and then coming almost so the mentee feels like as if they have to ascribe to your validation. But it's a fine line, and validating and also encouraging that mentee to continue to move forward, not necessarily seeking your validation, but also stepping into a place where they're comfortable. And even if they don't receive that validation, they'll continue to move forward. But as a mentor, validation is critical. So we've got those components. Love to get your comments in the chat. And these are just a few tips as you're stepping into this mentoring space for mentoring your young people. And I think we're passing it. Sadiq, you next.
No, that was great. That was great. I want to give folks a moment to breathe a little bit as well and just sort of marinate on that. Oh, like these are simple words on paper, but these are critical ingredients. I don't want this. Don't let the simplicity. We don't want them to let the simplicity fool them, Dayon, because we don't do this, y'all. We don't do this enough. Some of us do. We don't do this. Oh, we're just gonna run it back one more time. Openness, understanding. I always reference, right, folks? One of my favorite books, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. First, seek to understand, then be understood. We don't seek to understand enough. We jump to conclusions, Dayon. We're not vulnerable enough. We come with the perfect image, perfect adult, right? I don't have any issues. Our young people don't want to hear that. And then I think you did a beautiful job of explaining validation. Validation means, man, thank you for your opinion. Your opinion is valid. I don't necessarily have to agree. I don't have to like it, but it's still valid. That's the baseline and the foundation for respect. So I think these are powerful. But again, as is the case,
and it's funny that you
trick us.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Sadiq, because as I was sharing, and I was thinking as we worked on the points that, last week and in the beginning of this week, I'm thinking, man, they know this. But to your point, we have to make sure that we practice it. And I was thinking about that book, and then we'll continue to open up for the chat. The book was called Humble Inquiry. And it came out, probably you guys are maybe familiar. The author is Edgar Schein. And this concept of humble inquiry. So we approach all of our conversations and we approach all of our interactions from a place of humility and just asking questions. And I think
Drop
that's
a link, Dayon. We need that link.
Okay, I'll put that in there. All right, takeaways.
I think they got the takeaways. We're gonna keep rolling. We got some more good stuff. We got the takeaways. We're gonna keep rolling. But this is a beautiful quote by our ancestor, our Titan, James Baldwin. Gotta face it, y'all. So I'm gonna take it from here. This is again, like we just said, this could be a 40-hour training series, and as a matter of fact, we're going to be going deeper on the concept of critical mentoring here at Mentor Maryland, DC. Look out for later in the fall a book club series where we'll be discussing critical mentoring. Stay tuned for that, as well as we have another really cool announcement at the end of our time together today, which is fastly approaching. But critical mentoring, drop a 1 if you've heard of this. Drop a 2 if you read the book. Drop a 1 if you heard of critical mentoring. Drop a 2 if you actually read the book. 2 is bonus points. Naila is our resident librarian, so she's here for the book club. I love it. 1.5, Lauren, that was so real. It's a lot of 1.5ers here. We started it, but we ain't finished it. That was some vulnerability and some honesty there. Thank you so much for that. So let's get into it. The first step is going by the book. Going by the book. It is a wonderfully, beautifully written practical guide. I love the subtitle, Critical Mentoring. It is a practical guide. And Vancella, as you just laid out that 0.5, using our context clues, we can probably figure out what it is. It is mentoring through a critical race theory lens, and really is the culmination of a lot of what we've been talking about this morning. So again, we're gonna give you all a couple-minute overview, going by the book, continuous self-improvement, continuous self-reflection being the mantra of the day. So listen, there's like these foundational tenets of critical mentoring, which was released back in 2017 by, again, our good friend and colleague who we do a ton of work with, Dr. Tori Wieston-Serdan. It came at a critical time. And again, interestingly enough, it was before a lot of what we're seeing right now in terms of, the uprisings and, the protests around police killings and young people continuing to be railroaded because of their identity, et cetera. I was having a private chat conversation with one of our close collaborators here about, again, those laws in Florida, which are just insane and just like pure vitriol. But this is the context that we find ourselves in, that we're asking our young people to just push through. And this is why starting with that context is so critical, because oftentimes, right, instead of us addressing the context, or to Dayon's point a little while ago, even acknowledging that there are toxic environments that we're asking our young people to just fight through, it's pure insanity. And if we were to compare that to water, as Dr. Torrey does in the book, if we were to compare our current context, if it was air and water, it would be too toxic to breathe and too toxic to drink. And I want us to just really sit there for a moment and think about, like, you know, there's an example in the book where Dr. Torrey talks about a lot of times we don't want to hear from the student that the teacher is potentially doing bare minimum, showing bias in the classroom, at worst, straight up racism. But instead, again, we tell the student, just suck it up. This is how life is. Instead of walking alongside that young person to address that context. Critical race theory, which we're going to give a very, very brief overview crash course on. This idea of critical race theory being, again, absolutely important, especially the concept which Renee, through that beautiful exercise that she shared with us, was all about intersectionality, a term that was coined some years ago by one of the progenitors of critical race theory, Kimberly Crenshaw. She's the first really to coin this term, intersectionality, which talks about the various aspects of our identity coloring who we are, how we see the world, and how could it not inform how we mentor, right? And work with young people. It's impossible. And then again, youth-centric. So those are the three pieces of the core tenets that we just want to lift up here very, very briefly. Critical race theory, everybody's favorite. You know, SNL has had some really, really funny skits. People are losing their you know what in these school board meetings over critical race theory. And again, most folks have no idea actually what it is. The critical race theory is a framework originally growing out of the legal and social studies fields. And there's really kind of four foundations of critical race theory and understanding it. And that is, first and foremost, and this is the one that really has people up in arms most of the time when they're talking about critical race theory, is that racism is both ordinary and baked into every element of life here in this country, including many of the countries that we colonize. Racism is as American as apple pie. And a lot of folks really don't want to hear that. And if we're not prepared to have that conversation, we're probably not prepared to be working with young people, especially young people of color. But if we aren't ready to acknowledge it, we're probably not ready to work with any young people. So racism is ordinary, and again, is as American as baseball and apple pie. Number two, critical race theory is built on this idea of one of the frames of interest convergence. And again, a lot of folks don't really want to hear this. They think that, you know, magically, you know, the light bulb went off and we became enlightened during the civil rights movement. But in reality, it was a classic case of interest convergence. Where the rights that we were seeking as Black and brown folks during the civil rights era, they intersected with the interest of white folks at the time, which allowed that legislation to pass. Because as we should all well know, even after the legislation passed, much like the abolition of chattel enslavement, there were still many years where the law was still being broken, right? Where folks were still being enslaved, or the laws of desegregation were still being flouted, right? And that led to the creation of private schools, right? And private social clubs, like country clubs, where we're talking just a couple of years ago, there were still all white clubs in this country. I'm talking like in the last 2 years, folks. So interest conversion, social constructionism, race is a social invention, has no basis in biology or science. And then number four, again, intersectionality, that our identities are inseparable and they shape our experiences and again, our worldview. So this is your crash course in critical race theory. Share it with a friend. We're gonna make sure everybody gets these slides as well. But what is a critical mentor? A critical mentor does this. They acknowledge, they learn about, and they work alongside our young people and coalitions like this to disrupt systems of race, class, sexuality, gender, and ability. This is what critical mentors do. We don't, think that we shouldn't have to deal with race. We don't not acknowledge race. But again, we work to disrupt these systems, which first we have to acknowledge the systems. So we're going to keep rolling. context. This is, again, more of what we just shared a little while ago. We're seeing a rise in all of these pieces. But on the flip side of that, we're also seeing young people more civically engaged. We're seeing young people demanding healing justice, right? Not just, make these systems a little bit more bearable, but young people are demanding to be healed, right? And repaired. The root of reparations, right, is the word repair. And then again, absolutely young people, and Dayan, I think, alluded to this a little while ago, young people aren't saying, hey, don't tell me anything. They require and really appreciate engaged elders, but we have to approach young people with respect, and a lot of times we don't. So again, this is some of our context. I see some context here in the chat box as well, just making sure we don't miss anything. So listen, folks, as we continue on, this idea of, again, shifting from, this idea that young people just need to be better and figure out how to just take abuse, with a bigger smile. Like we're shifting away from that to, again, adults acknowledging that something is wrong and that systems perpetuate the need for this traditional mentoring model, right? Imagine a world where this word mentor didn't even exist. How about we imagine that? And that communities were equipped all the way to do the work that needed to be done of supporting young people, right? But again, this whole idea, young people, get out of your neighborhood. Your family is an impediment. Just be more resilient. This is all coded language to endure abuse, and we have got to begin that important shift away from this. This idea, from James Baldwin, right? And again, this is like the backdrop to Black History Month. That young people are not they're not the objects of charity, right? But rather, and this has already been said in our opening reflection question, young people, I think it was Garrett, talked about the assets that our young people bring to the table, especially our young people of color who have endured. But we don't want to fetishize that trauma that our young people have gone through. But again, really, we want to help reframe that in terms of assets and strength and all that it can be. So just in terms of the process of really thinking about critical mentoring in our own organizations, and then we're just going to close off this section with some reflection questions pulled directly from the book. Some of my favorite questions, so if you ever wondered, man, am I critical or where to start? We have some questions for you on this next slide, but checking the process. Are you listening to the folks that benefit from this work? And again, shout out to all the folks in the Zoom room that are not only working with young people, but families too, because this listening aspect, it goes for our work in the community, it goes for our work in family engagement, and especially goes for our work with young people. Are we listening to the folks who will benefit from this work? Number two, are we building, right? Again, alongside, are we building with the folks, not to, not for, but are we building with the folks who will benefit from this work? And then number three, space. Are we creating, again, space with the folks that will benefit from this work? And again, this is a little bit of a litmus test. It's a little bit of a gut check as we conceptualize the work. So then lastly, I just wanted to pause here and offer you all some critical questions directly, again, from the book Critical Mentoring. And I want y'all to think about each of these questions. I'm gonna pause here and I want y'all to just drop in the chat box, which of these questions is speaking to you right now? Which of these questions should be or could be your starting point to becoming more critical in your work with young people? Do we have conversations about race in my organization? Because a lot of times, right, we jump right to young people. We jump right to the end user, parents and families, et cetera. Are we talking about race among staff members? Are we talking about race with our boards throughout our organization? How traditional is my program, right? And is this traditional approach, is that comfortable or uncomfortable for those we serve? Or do we even know, or do we even care? Because I want us to think about how often we ask young people to adjust to us versus the other way around. As a gut check moment with Mentor Maryland, DC, we had to ask ourselves, man, why do we always schedule things where we want young people to participate? Why are we always scheduling that stuff in the middle of the day when we know they're in school, right? Or hopefully doing something productive, right? So, hey, if it's now we shifted. So if it's something that we want a young person to attend, we don't start that until 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Yeah, is it later in the day for us? Sure. But are we really serious about doing the work of engaging with those that we say we serve? You better believe it. Which questions, y'all? Which questions? How traditional is my program? Thanks, Brother Sam. How is my organization positioned in the community? This is such an important question, Sarah. How is my position? How is my organization viewed? What's the perception of my organization? A lot of us, again, don't know and really don't care. We've not really asked. How do we train our staff, right, to be better with LGBTQ youth? So I'm gonna pause us here. Keep it coming in the chat box. We got one more piece to share with y'all before we out of here. Renee? And this is just another question.
Yeah, so we promised to let you all know ways to celebrate Black History Month. Again, there's only a few days left, but we know that now, maybe know now, that a lot of these activities we're going to suggest we can do throughout the year as part of our cultural humility work. So everything about Black History Month, where it came from, what can we do about it, movies, why do we do Black History Month? What is the origin of it? I know our kids are definitely not aware of that. Discussing, you know, the history of Black people. What did we invent? What Black-owned businesses are in our area? Who are Black authors that, you know, your youth or you could be exposed to? Encouraging your mentees to see how can we connect Black History Month with our community and making it a community thing. Again, inviting more people in. Who are our elders? Connecting with HBCUs. Let's go to the next slide. Cooking, food, the origins of, you know, of our great dishes. You know, doing creative writing for our older youth. You know, our young adults. The importance of voting and of the Black vote, and you know the risks of Black voting right now and how vulnerable it is. Really important. We need those voters for sure. Promoting Black art in your community, making a playlist. We built a great playlist last night. I was thinking at our meeting, Sadiq, we gotta build that in Spotify and share out. But yeah, sharing Black music of all kinds. We're listening to jazz on our way in this morning. Doing our own family trees. Again, what is our own individual experiences and histories? How far can we go back and how familiar are we? There's a link here to this Do You Know scale. So again, you'll have all these things to take with you. Black History Jeopardy, do a little challenge, not only with your kids, but with your families too. Again, the more people we can bring into these conversations, the better. Especially uplifting. It's about to be Women's History Month. For the contributions of Black women, let's not overlook them, and let's continue to celebrate them as we move into Women's History Month. And yeah, just honoring all of our history throughout the entire year, not just this month. But I know you all have done some wonderful celebrations as well. I'd love to hear about them in the chat. But we are going to share some things that we have coming up on this same topic.
Which of these ideas are speaking to you all? That's the question. We're heading towards conclusion, y'all. Don't log off yet, though. We're not done yet. I see the numbers. I see you. Whoever just left, I saw them.
I love Gail's comment about one of her projects about the student-led talk show. That's great. And Marisol, perhaps joining a local NAACP chapter. That's excellent.
Also, this is Gail. I work with the at-risk population at my school. And recently, I decided to have the students write a book. And we did it through an organization called Sea Treasures. So if you look up Sea Treasures, what you do, you have your group write the book and they publish it for you. And it's kind of like a fundraiser. But I didn't use it as a fundraiser because it was right after the pandemic when we came back to school. And I realized when I was getting the entries, the trauma and the hurt and the pain that the kids experienced when they weren't at school together and we were seeing each other on a regular basis. So we decided to use the book as a resource for my LBGT club, because I'm an advisor for that, and for my Black Youth Awareness. And it really brought the two groups together, and they're able to talk about like their mental health issues in a more positive manner. And that's why I put in there, we're doing a lot of social emotional learning activities, because I take advantage of every free opportunity. Let me tell you, so the NEA has classes, blended classes, where you can take these classes and learn about cell and different, anything, leadership. So whatever I'm learning, I kind of share with the students, and I see a difference in their attitude. I see a difference in just loving themselves. And that's where I wanted them to get to be in a position to love yourself and know your worth and your potential. So I just happened to see this. I'm so glad I did see this. And I kept going off camera because I have kids coming back and forth. But they know when I'm on this computer looking at something intensely, she into something. She listening. So they sit and listen and take notes too.
Oh, that's great. Somebody asked Gail, what school are you? What
Yeah,
school are
what
you at,
school,
Gail?
Gail?
I work in Franklin High School. It's in Somerset, New Jersey. If you ever heard of New Brunswick, Rutgers, we're right next door.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
for
I've been
joining
dying to
us.
get on one of these, like the Merlin mentoring things. And today I seen, I was like, you know, I was like, they're gonna think I'm crazy.
You know, and that's our goal. Our goal is really to provide, resources across, obviously countrywide, but also, to allow us all to come together and to convene and elevate best practices and share our resources so we can elevate mentoring, all across the country. And we've got some resources. Gail, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Garrett Richardson. He said his mom works here. Is it Miss Sherry Richardson, Garrett?
Yeah, that's my mom.
Oh my God, that's my girl.
Small world. That's crazy.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Could you Gail, put your school in the chat again? A couple people have asked about your school. Up on the slide, everybody, we've got some additional resources that have been referenced throughout this training. The critical mentoring, how to be anti-racist. These are just resources that we'd like to share with you. And then I'll also add to that the book that I referenced, the Humble Inquiry, and then also the guides. All of these will be in the slide deck, which we will share with you. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. This has been an incredible gathering on a Friday.
Right, Dayon, thank you so much. We're heading towards conclusion. Listen, y'all, part of our commitment as Mentor Maryland, DC has been ongoing learning, not only for us as an organization, but providing opportunities across our region for, again, continuous self-reflection. We said that was going to be the mantra. So we are opening up the application for, it is actually opened just this past week, our application for our second cohort for our Moving Towards Liberation cohort learning experiences. This is a 10-month-long cohort designed to take organizations and leaders through a series of experiences that really forces that learning and that self-interrogation around all things anti-racism, race equity, and liberation, moving along that continuum to our young people having ultimately everything that they need to succeed in this world, and us becoming better in the process. Because as has been noted a couple of times already, our young people are only going to be as good as we are. Okay, they're only going to be doing as well as we are. And it's a sad truth because some of us is messed up, y'all. But the good news is that we're going to get better together. So please, we're going to drop the link. Learn more about Moving Towards Liberation. We have 2 info sessions coming up in March ahead of that application deadline, but we would love to see your organization apply for Maryland and DMV programs only. Unfortunately, we know we got Wisconsin, Ohio, on down to New Jersey and Virginia, but please spread the word. Don't leave yet. Hook us up. Please take our survey, our evaluation. Let us know how we did. Shout out to our friends at the Y in Central Maryland for co-sponsoring another amazing conversation today. Pull out your phone, take this survey. Let us know how we did. Let us know what other conversations you'd like to be a part of as it pertains to topics that are germane to you as a youth development professional, educator. Shout out North Carolina in the building. Can we drop the link to the survey as well? We just, Renee just shared the MTL survey, this information. Can we drop the link?
Somebody had mentioned that the link to MTL is not working, so we'll include that also in our follow-up information that we send to you.
Mentor Rhode Island in the building. Okay, Rhode Island, man. We
Rhode
got a
Island.
cosmopolitan group today, Dayon.
What?
Cosmopolitan.
Field trip. Field trip. After the
That's
snow is gone. After the snow is gone, Sadiq.
Thank you all so much. Reach out to us for any questions, comments. This has been an absolute joy and pleasure. Renee and Dayon, did y'all enjoy that as much as I did?
Good Friday. Really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Thank you for joining, y'all.
Thank you all.
Hope to see a bunch of you at MTL.
We're gonna drop that link one more time. Drop that survey link for one more time, Renee.
It's gonna show up when you exit Zoom, I promise. But hold on, I just closed it. There you go, y'all.
Renee, you're incredible. Good job. I don't know how you do it.
2 screens.
Oh, okay.